Welcome to this afternoon's Blockchain Week session. We are joined by Eftpos and Hedera, enterprise grade DLT featuring Ben, Tabell, Mance, Harmon, Robert Allen, and Zenobia Godschalk. I will hand the stage over to you all. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much. And before we begin, I just want to say that we acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognize their continuing connection to land, waters, and culture. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. My name is Zenobia Godschalk, and I am the SVP of Communications at Hedera Hashgraph. Thank you so much for joining us all today. I am joined here by Ben Tabell, who is the CIO of Eftpos Payments Australia.
Thank you.
As well as Mance Harmon, who is the CEO and co-founder of Hedera Hashgraph.
Hello.
And last but certainly not least, we have Robert Allen, who is entrepreneur in residence at Eftpos. Hi, Rob.
Hi.
All right, we have a great set of content here for you today. A couple of housekeeping items. All of your microphones are currently on mute. We are recording this session and we would love it if you share it afterwards. And then we would also encourage people to pop into the chat and say hello. And towards the end, we have saved some time for questions. So there should be a Q&A button on the bottom where you can click those in there. And then we will make sure to allocate some time for those right at the very end. So I am so excited to be talking to you all today. As was mentioned, Hedera is an enterprise grade DLT, and we're going to get into what that means. And a key part of that, I'm going to let Mance talk about what Hedera actually is, but a key part of being enterprise grade is having the governance model that enterprises will trust. And that is how we came to know Rob and the entire team at Eftpos. They are one of the governing council members of Hedera Hashgraph. You'll hear a little bit more about that model and why that is crucial for ongoing decentralization, and why we think it's really important to build what we call the trust layer of the internet. So Ben, I'm actually going to start with a question for you first. And this is as we are here at Blockchain Week Australia, most Australians probably do use Eftpos on a daily basis, but they may not know everything that you do behind the scenes. So can you share with us, the scope and the breadth of Eftpos' services?
I can indeed. Thanks very much, Zenobia. So as you say, many Australians do rely on our service on a regular basis. They know us pretty much for making electronic payments at point of sale. But many Australians probably don't know that we've been working quite hard for quite some time now with our members, being a member-based organisation, to enable far more digital payment capability. So it extends way beyond traditional card-centric models into the environment that we now find ourselves with, mobile wallets being popular and online payments being a necessity really for many Australians, particularly through COVID. So our services, as you ask, have been extending well beyond the traditional point of sale for some time now, and more so, Australians will start to see the option to pay with Eftpos in other ways moving forward. And that's part of our whole diversification strategy and our focus on getting new technologies enabled to support where we're heading. Things like enabling QR for a whole digital ecosystem of support. And we certainly, Rob may speak about it shortly, but there's a big part of our work and effort at the moment to bring in digital identity into transactions so that we can securely support payments and other transaction types in the Australian digital ecosystem. So I guess that probably covers the breadth of the services today, but it's much more than point of sale payment enablement, as many Australians know us.
Thanks, Ben. It sounds like you're thinking about a lot of things all interconnected there. Mance, we have worked together for a long time, and I think I see from the chat that we have some of the H barbarians on the event today, which is the nickname some of the community members have given themselves and which we love. But for those who are new to the Hedera story, can you share a little bit about your and Lehman's vision for creating the world's first enterprise-grade public ledger?
Sure. Well, yeah, so some of you may have heard this many times before, but I'm happy to start from the beginning. Lehman Baird is my co-founder in Hedera, and he is the one that invented something called the Hashgraph. Hashgraph is an alternative to blockchain. It has some fantastic properties in terms of security and performance that go well beyond what blockchain can achieve, but it solves the same category of problems that blockchain solves, just in a better way. And we decided in 2017 that it was time to think about building a public network that used the Hashgraph technology, so the third generation open public network in the DLT space. And there were 4 problems that we recognized needed to be addressed if we wanted to see mainstream adoption of not just our platform, but of the category in general. The first 2 are technical. One was performance and security, as I've already mentioned. To characterize this, when we talk about performance on the Hedera network today, in a beta mode, a beta context with the network throttled, we're able to process 10,000 transactions per second. When you compare that to Bitcoin or Ethereum as sort of first generation technology, Bitcoin can process 7 transactions per second globally. Ethereum is about double that, roughly 14 or 15 transactions per second. And the cost per transaction is enormous. It can be tens of dollars or even hundreds of dollars for some types of transactions on the Ethereum network. And the cost for our transactions are a fraction of a cent, and it's fixed. So those were some of the problems that needed to be addressed to see mainstream adoption, period. In addition, Hashgraph achieves a level of security. It achieves the theoretical level of what one can achieve in the field of distributed consensus. It's something called asynchronous Byzantine fault tolerant. It's a technical term, but suffice it to say that you can't do any better than what Hashgraph does. And you couple that with performance, and it makes Hashgraph unique in the industry from a technology perspective. So those were 2 of the 4 obstacles to overcome. We addressed both of those with Hashgraph. The other 2 were stability in the network, and we're able to make some legal and we use some legal and technical controls to guarantee that the public network is never going to split or fork into competing networks. That's really important for enterprise use cases. If you have to worry as an enterprise that the network's going to split, you have to worry then that your application may end up running on 2 different networks, and all of those users out there connecting to nodes may connect to one or the other and cause all kinds of chaos and problems. So we've been able to make that guarantee through a combination of technical and legal controls. But then finally, and probably the most important, certainly one of the most important aspects of the platform, is its governance model. We took inspiration from the Visa network, frankly. I read a book, literally read a book called One for Many, written by a gentleman named D. Hawk. And D was the founder of Visa before it was Visa. It was called Bank Americard back in the 60s. And he wrote a book about the experience and captured in this book the governance model that they used originally for Visa. And we just applied it here. And what that looks like today is a council that is growing ultimately to 39 members. We're more than halfway there now. We have 20 members. Each of the members are specifically chosen in such a way that the council as a whole is distributed the most decentralized community of governing members in in the market. We choose the council members to be geo-distributed. They're not all from a single geography, to be distributed across industry, and then additionally distributed through time. The council members can't stay council members forever. They can serve up to 2 3-year terms for a maximum of 6 years at scale when we achieve scale. And the governing council does exactly what the name says. They provide oversight of every part of the organization. There are committees that provide this oversight. There's a legal and regulatory committee. There's a technical committee and a marketing committee and on, these types of committees, and they control the organization. So it's, again, by design, meant to be the most decentralized community of governors, if you want to use that term, of any of the public chains in the market today. And that was the fourth obstacle to overcome: stable, staid, trustworthy governance by a community of peers to the enterprise community. The governors, the council members rather, are all the leaders in their industries, in their geographies, the largest organizations with the best brands in the world. Zenobia?
All right, thanks, Mance. And as Mance mentioned, we have governing council members all across the world. We actually have nodes on every continent except for Antarctica, which brings us to Rob, the man who makes all of this happen. So how did you make the connection between, Eftpos and the vision and everything that they are trying to do, and, Hedera, Public Ledger?
Yeah, thanks, Zenobia. I'm not the man that makes it all happen, but I'm part of a team that is very innovative, very forward-thinking. And as Ben said, we've got a digital strategy at Eftpos that requires that innovative thinking to move from kind of traditional payments operator into the digital space, into e-commerce, into new ways of initiating payments, into digital identity. And digital identity is one of my businesses. These things require some disruptive thinking, some innovative thinking. And so we put in place ways to do that. Now, I'm an unashamed fan of Hedera Hashgraph, and have been for a number of years. And when we were looking at some of the problems that we were seeking to solve in the digital space and in the identity space, and not just in the near term, in this kind of next few years where we're rolling out this digital strategy, but in the longer term, Eftpos have got the tagline being good for Australia. And what the Australian future state is potentially very different, as it is in every country, from our current state. We're going to be looking at smart cities. We're going to be looking at Internet of Things devices, making device-to-device microtransactions. We're going to be looking at autonomous vehicles and things that we haven't even thought about yet. All of this needs new infrastructure, and Eftpos needs to be informed by that. It needs to be informed by experimentation and innovation, such that we are not just for the here and now, but we're for the Australian future as well. So I made a case to do a proof of concept around Hedera and micropayments last year. For me, as a payments guy, it seemed to be the obvious killer app. Hedera had run a very good community test prior to open access on micropayments, and I thought that it was a really good test of the network. And I wanted to recreate that, but in an Eftpos context. So we ran a proof of concept where we created the architecture that was necessary. We brought together a team of both Hedera and ourselves, and also a partner in a wallet provider called Miko. And together we created this proof of concept that was specifically there to look at implementing a stablecoin system which we could make microtransactions at a cent. Most payments infrastructure operates at tens or even dollars. tens of cents or dollars in terms of unit cost to make payments. When my Fitbit is paying your Fitbit across the world because you've done more steps than I have in the last 5 minutes, then we need different infrastructure to do that because it needs to scale to billions of transactions. In my view, and in my kind of experience, Hedera is the only next generation network that will support those kinds of use cases. So we wanted to test that. And we did, and it operated beautifully. So that was just the proof of concept. Now, because we've got all this digital strategy, we are in a position where we can start looking at ways that problems can be solved in a way which is maybe non-traditional, more distributed. Certainly from the identity perspective, we can extend into the decentralized identity space. There are kind of operations and operational costs that can be taken out of an operator like Eftpos by implementing a distributed ledger and many other things. So once we set ourselves on this journey, it seemed as if it was just a natural extension to the payments networks that we currently operate. And traditional payments networks get a lot of grief from the blockchain community, and quite rightly in some regards. But they do actually are there, and they meet the needs for today's use cases. If we look a little bit into the future, and not very far into the future, we find use cases that could be enabled through distributed ledger and scalable, secure, fixed cost at a very, very low unit cost networks like Hedera, and entirely new business models will be formed around those networks.
And Ben, I think that tees it up, as the CIO, what do you envision using, public DLT for in the future?
Yeah, it's thanks, Zenobia. It's probably worth calling out that Rob has been very influential in our thinking around this topic, which has been really good for the business to start operating in a new way. I think when we look at use cases specifically, we have been quite centric around low cost payment capability in the country and how that can be good for Australia. So there's been a lot of thinking about that. But then, as Rob says, there's quite a lot of ancillary activity around the digital ecosystem that you could really get into problem solving mode for. Again, Rob quoted that we were always looking to take cost out of a member-based organisation that's effectively not for profit. We're profit for purpose as a business, and we focus on returning as much value as possible to the members. But having said that, we are good for Australia because we enable commerce in this country in a low-cost way. So a lot of our use cases are around that. That's what I'd call out. I think one of the advantages we've identified is that being a council member with Hedera has offered us access to the other council members who are doing really interesting things, and having that community has been a real positive for us in our innovation play. We've spent quite a bit of time around ideation more recently, and Rob can maybe quote a few of these if you'd like on where we might head, but we do think it facilitates, the network itself facilitates quite a lot of capability that would underpin where we're heading. We build, traditionally we're a scheme. When we move into new parts of the digital ecosystem, we've been thinking with our scheme hat on and trying to work out new ways to deliver it. So Connect ID, as Rob mentioned, our digital identity business is one that's going to have a whole lot of needs for very low cost, secure transactions, and we see the Hedera network offering us a great opportunity there. So there's things that we can really modularize, I guess, through that process, and that forms our thinking. And again, I think Rob covered most of what I wanted to talk about, so it's probably enough from me just on that.
I would like to throw a couple of use cases in then, given that Ben has given me leave.
He's ceded the floor here.
So just in the identity space, we're kind of modeled on a federated model. So there's very little room in a traditional federated model for a distributed ledger, not typically, until you start looking into ways of interoperating with the new next generation of identity frameworks that are coming along under W3C and self-sovereign and decentralized identity. So Hedera supports decentralized identifiers, it supports verifiable credentials, it supports all those emerging standards. And we're running a pilot around exactly this. So interoperating federated and decentralized, which is super exciting, really exciting. And then within that, because we're a member scheme like Eftpos, Connect ID will be a member organization that scales to thousands, maybe tens of thousands of relying parties. We need a scalable billing and settlement system. Well, billing and settlement is perfect use case for decentralization and distribution. So we're looking at that as well. And then you start adding microtransactions on top of that. And this is just one business, and we've got the whole of the rest of the strategy. My favorite use cases are around loyalty and customer engagement, though, because in my days at PwC, we were always pitching different type solutions to users for blockchain solutions, but their second favorite use case was always customer engagement and loyalty. So I think there's a really great place to play here for Eftpos in terms of its outreach into and customer engagement through our new payments wallet in terms of doing things like that. And that leads me into tokenization. So, the Hedera token service absolutely and inherently supports those sorts of new ways of engaging with customers. So I haven't even spoken about autonomous vehicles and toasters paying fridges and grocers to
they're still my favorites
to move food around. So we haven't even started thinking about the possibilities once this infrastructure is in place.
Very exciting. I know we are getting a little bit short on time, and I want to make sure we have a chance to answer a few of the questions from the audience. Mance, wrapping up with one final question for you. We've traveled the world. We've seen and engaged with different governing council members and also enterprises that face a number of different regulatory challenges depending on what geography they are based in. I've heard you talk about the importance of working with regulators, especially we're working with a number of regulated industries and with various frameworks per country. I think this is a little bit of a different mindset from some of the wild west that we hear about in crypto. Can you share a little bit of your thoughts on, that process and how that engagement works?
Sure. Well, when we started this, the industry was still very much Wild West. It's changed a lot in the past 5 years since we've been really engaged in this activity. The roots of the industry in some ways are sort of anarchist, and we understood that if we as an industry were going to mature and go mainstream, then we had to make it possible for the regulators to do their job and to do it well. I mean, they fulfill an important role in society, and we took the view when building the platform that we wanted to be able to be, for our customers, for those users of the network, to be able to be regulatory compliant in what they build. So we built into the fabric of the network features that make it possible to that end, to make it possible for the developers to achieve those goals. For example, just to name one, and then I'll stop so we can take questions. We have a distributed file system that developers can use. And what we have is something we call, it's not immutability, it's controlled mutability that makes it possible for developers to not only, when they put a file into the file system, get a proof back from the network that the file has been stored there, but that if they need to remove the file from the file system, they can get proof back from the network the file's been deleted from all the mainnet nodes. this is really important if you start to think about things like right to be forgotten and GDPR and other regulatory requirements in different regimes. Controlled mutability as a concept maybe is, I've not heard it from anyone else in the industry. We may be the only platform to have it. I won't swear to that, but it's these types of features that I think are important, that that I think that the regulators hopefully will appreciate, that we've taken these into account up front and made the platform something that can scale to the mainstream and provide enterprise grade use cases that are regulatory compliant.
All right, thanks, Mance. So I'm going to tell you we won't get through all these questions in 5 minutes. You do have our contact info in there. We also do monthly town halls where you can submit questions. So we hope you'll tune into some of those. Ben and Rob, I think this is a good one for you guys. Will the Australian public at any point become aware of Hedera in the same way they are aware of Eftpos, or will HBAR and Hedera always be abstracted away from the retail end user?
I mean, I would open by saying it wouldn't be an intent to keep it a secret by any stretch of the imagination. We would see it as a particular value proposition for our Eftpos business, as we do our membership of the council and our node hosting in this country. So I think all of that we see as a value proposition. Look, that's kind of a branding question where we've only recently relaunched our brand, around centric to our Good for Australia ethos and being part of the digital ecosystem, an integral part of the digital ecosystem. So as consumers understand how that works around identity and those kind of things, how other technologies play into it, I imagine it will be possible, but I'm not sure it would be the goal. That would be my answer.
Yeah, and the two brands aren't intrinsically linked in Australia, of course. The path to decentralization for Hedera envisages a world where anyone can stand up a node. And Eftpos will have just been part of that journey in the early years of the 100-year company.
Great. Mance, maybe if you want to take this one, is Hashgraph as secure as Bitcoin?
Yes, absolutely. It's more secure. I mean, fundamentally, it's more secure in the sense that the algorithm, the primary building block, achieves a level of security that Bitcoin simply doesn't. That all the Gen 1 protocols don't. Now, Bitcoin has been around for, 12 years now, and it's proven to be pretty secure. So I'm not saying that Bitcoin is insecure, but from a pure objective perspective in terms of the math behind the technology, Hashgraph is more secure than just about any platform out there objectively. And that's a pretty simple answer. It's not objective. It's black and white. It's pure math.
All right. Yes. Math doesn't lie, right?
Right.
Okay, this one ties to a news story that we've been following closely over here in the States as well. Has the Facebook/Google payments for news law helped motivate any of Eftpos's thinking in the space, in particular around online micropayments?
Would say, yeah. Do you want to answer that one, Rob? There you go.
No, I mean, it's been a hot topic over here, but it's not influenced our thinking. I mean, when you take a product to market, you've got to get the product market fit. You've got to find people to pay for that service. It's not influenced by Google or Facebook or any other of the big tech companies.
Yeah, I think it was coincidental. Same response.
All right. And then Mance, I have to finish with this one because it feels like a layup. Would you consider Hedera to be a once in a generation or lifetime technology?
Oh, certainly in my lifetime. Yes. I mean, look, Lehman So we don't normally go into this level of detail, but Lehman, what he invented is a fundamental breakthrough that academics have been looking for 30 years. And so I don't want to discount at all the importance of the invention Hashgraph. And what we're doing here in Hedera is taking that fantastic piece of technology and, like Rob said, creating a company I expect to be around for 100 years. We call it a 100-year company. We take a very long view. We try to take, when we make decisions, we make them with that in mind. And what we're building here as a community is something that I think is going to provide a layer of infrastructure for new business models for the entire next generation and beyond. So I'm very excited about it. I think it is going to fundamentally change society in some meaningful ways.
Great. Well, thank you all. Thank you, Blockchain Australia, for having us on today. Thank you to the Eftpos team. Thank you to Mance. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Everyone.